Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to be creating with these Ohuhu water-based brush markers. Now, full transparency, I have been sent these markers and the sketch pad in return for this video, but I am not being paid or compensated in any other way, and you will of course get my full and honest opinion, plus I'm a terrible liar, so you'll always get that anyway. So this is the 160 set of Journal Dual brush pens, and as I said, they're water-based, which presented an interesting challenge for me, as when it comes to marker pens, I'm far more experienced with alcohol markers. They come in this really, really beautiful presentation box. I love it a lot. It's my kind of thing, like pastel colours and florals, just love it. And as well as the markers, you get some spare tips, both the brush tips and the fine tips, which I've just realised I don't remember where I put those. And there's also some swatch sheets, which I had a little trouble getting there. I had to use some really long tweezers to get them. There's one that's like pre-filled in, like a printed one, and then one that's on paper, very similar to the mixed media pad to swatch yourself. Now, I am not going to do all of the swatching on camera. When I am asked or invited to do a video like this, like reviewing a product, I always have a little look online, see what other people have done with the product. And for these markers, not all the Ohuhu markers, but for these ones in particular, there were very few videos of people actually creating with them. Very few. Most people were swatching them. And that's fine if that's your thing, but I wanted to do something at least a little bit different. So, not swatching them on camera. I will say the printed swatch sheet you get is a little off on colour. The colours, it gives you a very rough idea, but they're a little bit off. That's my one main criticism about these, is that swatch sheet. But once you've filled your own in, you get a very good idea. Now, the one that comes with this swatch sheet is on that mixed media paper, as I said, and the colours will come up darker and spread better on that. So I did do some trying out on some plain paper a little bit later on. Oh, and right there, apparently. So you can see the difference. They're basically lighter on plain paper than they are on watercolour or mixed media paper, which is to be expected with pretty much most colours and markers anyway. The little mixed media pad, I use this quite a lot. I really, really like this. It's similar to watercolour paper, but it's a little bit smoother. It also comes with this sort of plasticky sheet, which you are supposed to put between pages when working to prevent bleed through. But I don't like working directly in a book, so I was using it for different things. So I'm going to be creating 2 cards and a journal page to kind of show you how I've worked with these markers, plus another couple of little bits here and there. The first thing I needed was a birthday card that was poppy themed for someone who really, really loves poppies. I'm not great at drawing sometimes, so I kind of copied just one I saw online, and very lightly did it with a mechanical pencil. And this one I don't end up using because it ended up a little bit, it just wasn't what I envisioned for the card. I mean, it's fine, but it's good to have like a nice tryout with anything new before you're doing like a project that has a purpose, as it were, such as a card. At this stage, I hadn't filled in the swatch sheet, so I was using another piece of the mixed media paper to test every different colour and see how it would work. And I was mostly experimenting, seeing how they blend with water, how they blend with each other, how you can do layers with the same colour. So yeah, this was very much an experimental page. For water-based markers, they blended a lot better than I expected. Now, they will behave very differently on different types of paper. You couldn't really do this on, say, plain printer type paper, but on this mixed media paper and probably on watercolor paper, you have a lot more flexibility. If you do want to blend with water, you do have to be a little bit quick, especially if you're blending 2 colors together. But what I do like about these is you can layer the colors. So if I just wanted to make something a slightly darker red, I could just use the same color over the top, like you can do with alcohol markers. So you can't always do that with water markers. So I kind of very much appreciated that. I do go back and forth using the fine tip and the brush. You see, mostly I'm using the brush, but using the fine tip for like little details and highlights and things like that. Now, I am not an art channel as such. I don't really know how to talk you through exactly what I'm doing. So I'm not going to do a whole lot of that and just let the visual images do their work. But I did, as I said, I kept experimenting on this page with different colours and different layers and saying how different things would work. As I said, I don't end up using this image for the card. It ended up just a little bit more cartoony, maybe, that I wanted. Like, it was more of an illustration than an art piece. I don't know if I'm making any sense there, but you know, it's fine, and I will probably just shove it in my journal somewhere because it's something that I've created. So after deciding that I didn't want to use that piece for the birthday card, I thought, let me do something that I know I'm more comfortable with, which is playing more with watercolours. So I took a piece of the mixed media paper, folded and tore it in half, and decided to make one half a wet base, and see how that would work, and then make the other half still working in a watercolor way but slightly differently. Now I've very, very clearly made this base just a little bit too wet, and it has just made a big smudge. But it was fun to do, and you can see how the pens like very much work as watercolors in this situation. So they start off really well, but as I said, that paper is just far too wet, and it just blends and just turns into a big smushy blob. But fine, always good to experiment. So on this one, I took that little plastic sheet that you're supposed to use between pages, and I'm using it as kind of like a little paint palette. So putting some of the colour onto that plastic with the pen, and then spraying some water on and using it as little watercolour paints like that. Sorry if you can hear my neighbour's dogs barking, by the way. I do really like the way this one turned out, and I think it kind of relates to the flexibility of these pens. Any kind of water-based markers, you can do different things. You can just use them for colouring in, as it were, or as watercolours like I'm doing here. And I was also able to go back in straight with the pens to add highlights and shadows and things where I wanted a little bit more control over what was happening and where the colour was going and things. Now, I could have left it as it was, and I think it would have been fine, but I wanted to add a little bit more definition. So I'm doing a sort of doodly line art kind of thing over the poppies, so it makes them look more like poppies. It's not technically line art because I do lift the pen off the page, but it's kind of like faux line art, like it kind of looks like it. I should probably say that in this video where I'm using something for like details and outlines and things, and I'm not using one of the Ohuhu pens, I'm mostly using a Pigma Micron pen. And now all I have to do with this is create it into a card. So I roughed up some of the edges and kept that like notebook border thing at the top, cut my card blank down to size, and then I took it over to my sewing machine and stitched in like these fun rough little stitched borders with a black thread because I thought that would work the nicest with the colours of the poppies, and that's how that looks. Really pleased with that. And then all I had to add is some kind of sentiment, not always necessary I should point out, but I wanted to add one here. And then I add a couple of Nuvo drops in the colour Autumn Red, I believe, for just a little bit extra detail. And there, that card is finished. I'm really proud of this one. I think it's really cute. So here is example number 2, if you will, of using the markers, this one being a very watercolour based way of using them. Next up, I'm going to do something in my journal, and I'm going, no, I'm not. Forgot I did this. I did my swatches, and I was just showing you there how they look slightly different. I will say the swatch sheets, the ones you fill in yourself, are on a slightly off-white base, so the colours look slightly darker than they would do on a white base. And as I said, it's the mixed media paper, so it does change how things look there. But I wanted to do something simple on plain printer paper. This is 100 GSM white navigator paper, and I also wanted to try out using them as brush pens. Now, I will never ever claim to be an expert at brush lettering, ever. I'm not great at it, but I do like working with these in creating brush lettering, and I will actually, completely honest here, I prefer doing brush lettering with these than a certain popular brand that rhymes with schmombo. I just found them easier to use. That's all there is to it. Again, I'm not the best brush letterer in the world ever. I'm very much a novice at it, and I completely I don't follow any of the rules or anything, but I have a rough idea of how to do it. I was also layering up the colours a little bit, so you can kind of get that kind of cool ombre effect, and then I tried it with a different colour as well, or like a slightly darker one, so you get a tone on tone effect. Did a little bit of experimenting, blending that with water when I remembered that I was doing this on printer paper, and it's really not the best medium for water, but you can get a rough idea. What I wanted to do with these was use a different colour and see how that worked. The purple I used there was a little bit too light, so I went in with a darker one and then very quickly blended it with a wet brush. You do have to be quite speedy doing this before it kind of sets in, and I was doing it quite quickly. I have made a bit of it's not perfect neat work. I just wanted to get like a rough idea of how it worked, but as you can see, you can do some pretty cool things with the lettering. So yeah, definitely great pens if lettering is your thing. Okay, next up I'm going to work on a really simple journal page. I'm going to do 3 little drawings or paintings, or what, I'm going to draw something and colour it in with markers, kind of slightly more cartoonish style, so I'm not going to go in with any water with these and just let the pens sort of blend themselves, using the fine tip end for certain details and highlights and things. So yeah, what I am doing here, so I've mentioned in other videos that there is another hobby in my life that takes up a big chunk of it, and that is, and some of you are going to think I'm insane, and that's fine, but I am a fish keeper, as in I have pet fish, tropical fish and other fish. I love my fish. I have 3 tanks and a pond. Well, kind of have 4 because my mum has a tank, but I look after it for her. And I love my little fishy babies. So I wanted to add something about them into my journal. So I'm going to draw 3 different types of fish, one to represent each one of my main tanks, or like not including my mum's goldfish tank. So first, this is what is known as a coolie loach or an eel loach. There's lots of different types of them. I'm just doing one of the types that I have. They are such fun, derpy little noodle fish. I love them so much. Like, when it comes to favourite species rather than favourite individual fish, these are my favourites. And I'm just going to finish that one off with some little highlights using the fine tip on one of the lighter yellow pens, and that worked out really, really well. So I think the fine tips don't get much attention, but they definitely have like their place and their uses. Next up, I'm going to draw a better fish, which is one that most people will be familiar with. Not my best work, this one. I did really, really struggle. I should have probably traced an image, but it's done now. I've had a number of better fish over the years. I've had 5 in total. At one point I had 2 at the same time in different tanks. But I decided to do the one I have currently. Oh, meow, here's my cat. Anyway, this fish's name is Kelsia. Shout out Brando Sando fans. He is a... You know what? I don't know if I can say what kind of better he is, because I know someone who got like a content warning for saying the name of this colour type of better. It's nothing bad, like it's not swear words or anything, it's just it has historical connotations, like not racist or anything bad like that, but just in case, I'm not going to say it, but he is blue and yellow, and it's the most gorgeous like dark blue blending into yellow, blending into orange. He is a very, very, very stunning fish, and he was an absolute find as well, because to find this kind of better with that tail shape was great. This was the drawing or piece or anything I worked on in this video that I struggled the most with. Trying to get the colours to reflect what he actually looked like was difficult, and I'm not saying that's down to the markers, it's more likely down to the artist. I tried to do a thing where like I started with a lighter blue so I could build on top of that and on top of that, so because you know, if you go in straight with the dark colour, that's it, you can't go over the top of that with anything. So this is the same kind of thing I do with alcohol markers in any painting really, you like starting with the lighter colour. But I just, yeah, it's fine, like it's not terrible, but it really doesn't reflect his colours as well as I would have liked it to do. And also, where I added the yellow, it blended with the blue to make green, which is usually what you want things to do, but he doesn't actually have any green in him at all. It literally goes from blue straight to the yellow orange, but it's fine. It's fine. It doesn't, not every single work has to be absolutely perfect and exactly what you envisaged, and his colouring may have been better suited to working with water, thinking about it. But never mind, it's done now. You can't really see, but I did kind of doodle in some scale shapes on his body as well. But as I said, you can't really see that very well. And then lastly, to represent my third tank, I am going to do one of my little pea puffers. Pea puffers, also known as dwarf or pygmy pufferfish, are tiny, tiny, tiny little like 1.5 inch pufferfish. They are adorable, and I love them very, very much. This was probably the most fun to draw this one, and that colour I'm using is there layered really, really nicely to like show the contours of the shape of the fish. But just as an FYI, nothing to do with the markers. If you're looking at this and thinking that fish is so flipping cute, I want one, these are not beginner fish. These are, you need to have some experience to have these fish. I've only just got them in the past couple of months, and like they only have live food. I have to like go out every week and buy them special food, and I even grow their own food. And yeah, not a beginner fish, I'm just going to say that. Adorable, cutest little things in the world, but also not easy. But anyway, that was really, really fun to draw that one. As you can see, it's kind of cartoony, but I had a great time doing it. So to put these in my journal, sorry if you're afraid of snakes, by the way, it will get covered up. I had some leftovers from this stuff you use to put on the back of fish tanks. I don't actually generally do that with my tanks, but I had 2 on one. It's a long story, but I had some leftover stuff, and I thought I would throw it in my journal, because when it comes to wanting to write or do anything about my fish, all like craft supplies are sea themed. There's not a whole lot of freshwater fish or freshwater themed craft supplies, so you have to get a little bit creative with these things sometimes. And literally all I'm going to do is add that backing on. It tore really nicely, by the way, the plastic, like really fun to tear through. I had a little bit of washi tape with some fish on, which is blue but not necessarily sea themed. And then I am going to stick my little doodles on. Obviously I'm going to cut them out first, make them into little die cuts and stick them on. I also decided just to add a little something extra to the page as well, I would create like little labels to put the name of the fish and then the scientific name of the fish, because I can be a bit of a nerd about that sort of thing. So I just used some offcuts that were left over after cutting these out, cut them into little rectangle shapes, and then I used kind of like a corresponding colour to the fish that I've done, and just use that pen to make a straightish line around the edge to colour it, and then you've got a cute little label. On the off chance that there are any fish nerds like myself watching, I do know that coolie loaches are not all technically coolie loaches. I have written Pangeo Maliana because that's one of the kinds I keep in my tank, but I know they're not all called that. I have 3 or 4 different types in my tank, but anyway, I can't stand if someone in the comments were like, oh, you know, that's not really fair. No, I know, but anyways. Hashtag fish nerd problems. I had to redo the label for pea puffer because I did not leave enough room on the first one to write Carina tetraodontra vancoricus. I think that's what it is. You are very much getting a little look into the other part of my life right now and how passionate I am about it. Anyway, I'm going to stick all those down and then just use that white blank space in the background to add some journaling. I'm going to use a Pigma Micron in brown because I thought that would blend better with the whole thing. I thought if I added black it would be just a little bit too strong, and it almost looks a bit like kind of like, you know, like a scientific book where, you know, you have like your pictures and your labels and everything. Wasn't necessarily what I was going for, but I think it kind of looks like that, and I do love my little cartoon Coolie and Pea Puffer very, very much. So there's the journal page. As I said, really, really simple. And then the last thing I'm going to do is another card. This was a birthday card for my dad, and I always struggle with masculine cards because, you know, so many craft supplies are florals and butterflies and things like that, and I am not saying that men can't like those things, but generally speaking, if you want the more masculine things, they can be hard to find. So I decided I would draw his car, his beloved Maserati, and yes, do a little drawing of it for him on his card. I did print out and trace the shape of the Maserati Quattroporte 2003 because there is no way I can do that freehand. Just nope, not happening. And with this one, I'm kind of using a mix of the techniques. Like, I'm using the pen straight onto the paper, but I'm also adding like a very, very, very light layer of water, just lightly brushing it on the background so things blend a little better. And I'm going to do the thing where I put the pen on the plastic and then use a brush. So putting all those things together and using the fine tip as well for highlights and things like that. So this one was kind of like the final creation of experimenting with the pens in all these different ways. One thing I had a problem with, however, was I could not find the exact colour of his car. It's a seriously light blue colour, and there just wasn't that colour in this set. So I did a base of this very light bluish grey and then went in with stronger blues and like blended them in, and then used like the darker blues to do like the shadows and things, and again I'm blending those in so it works a bit better. It still looks more blue than the car actually is in real life, but you still get the sense of what it's supposed to look like. And this was just a challenge for me in general because I don't think I've ever drawn a car or painted a car or whatever in my entire life. Just not something that's ever interested me personally. But yes, I wanted to do this for my dad's birthday because, as I said, he loves his car. And on the off chance, anyone in the UK, like if you are or you know anyone who is a Maserati mechanic, please let me know because he's having trouble finding one, preferably in the north, but where, you know, he'll travel. Yeah, I don't know, it was worth a shot. What else? I did have trouble knowing what to do with the windscreen. Again, I'm not a card drawer. I don't know how to do these things. I think it may have probably looked better if I went with a lighter colour, but I didn't, so never mind. I went with a more darker effect instead. I think what I did was I went in with kind of a navy blue first, as in like, and that to be like where the light was going to hit it, and then I filled that in with black, and then I blended it all together. And the black does look a little bit dark, and it kind of detracts from the black of like the front grills and the wheels, but you'll live and learn. Anyway, I said I'm no expert in these things, but it's always fun to try out all these different things. And then to add some highlights and detailing, I went in with a white Uniball Signo gel pen to, as I said, add in those little bits of highlights and detailing. I also smudged it on purpose, smudged it a little bit over the top to give it sort of like that glass sheen. One thing I will say about the pens, which to be honest happens with most pens, so it's not like a particular criticism or anything, it's just they are ones that it will transfer to the side of your palm and then you might get smudges on the paper. So that does happen with a lot of different mediums and things, so it's, as I said, it's not really a direct criticism, just something to be aware of. Here's me using the white gel pen to do the little Maserati logo. I had to do it in a very sketchy way because it's a bit too complicated to do it exactly in that size, but you know, for somebody who knows, that's obviously what it is. And again, I was getting a really good effect by adding it to certain areas and then smudging it a little bit with my finger to add little highlights, and then just doing it directly onto things where I just wanted that shape, such as the logo and the grill and things. And then I do go back in a couple of times with some of the fine tip ends, again adding more details and shading, and I wanted like a rough outline. I didn't want to do it in black because I thought that would be too harsh, but I used quite a sort of like a medium grey to do that. And then yeah, I think that's pretty much done. For the final thing, I used the pens again, doing them on the plastic to make them into a watercolour to add some splashes, covered up the car itself with the original thing that I traced off of. And then I decided to grab a very fine brush and kind of flick at those spots to almost make it look like go fast lines, just to give the impression of movement, as you will. And all that was left to do was to turn it into a card. I was just measuring there so it would fit onto the card blank. I took I forgot about this part. I needed some kind of sentiment to say happy birthday, so I thought it'd be super cute if I did a little reg plate, little number plate that said HPB Day. So obviously for my lovely viewers across the globe, this is a UK reg plate. I couldn't do a different one. I tried out some different sizes to see how it would work. I got the standard UK reg plate font up and tried to copy it as best I could. There was a lot of trial and error in this. I did lots of different ones and messed them up and threw them away, and I spent way too long on this than I needed to do, but you know, it's fine, it's fine. We got it done in the end. One thing I will say, while I'm using the black, while I remember, now this isn't a specific criticism of Ohuhu. I think a lot of brands need to do this. There are certain colours that you tend to use more than others in any kind of paint, pen, whatever set, and one of those is black, and I really wish these places would give you more than one black, because it's always the first to run out, you know, it's the first to fray, it's the first to, just please, all companies, give us more than one black. It would be so helpful. Just, there are a few who have started doing it, I have noticed this, but yes, just, this is my one thing that I wish people would do. But as I said, it's not a specific criticism of Ohuhu, because loads of brands do it. Anyway, speaking of black, I used it to make a black edge around the card, and then also a really, really fine black edge around the little number plate sentiment as well. I was very precise about sticking that on. I'm not usually a crafter who uses tweezers for things, but I did in this case, so I could be very, very precise. The card still needed something, so I took a grey Pigma Micron and kind of like a faux stitched border, but instead I made the lines kind of a little bit longer and wider, so they looked a little bit more like the lines that you would get on road markings, kind of making it look more car-y. That's a word. And with that, that's all my little projects done, all my different creations playing around with these pens. I hope you enjoyed seeing them. I hope I showed you like different ways of using the markers. I definitely had a great time like experimenting and trying out different things, especially drawing a car. Like, that was way beyond my comfort zone. So final thoughts. My one criticism is the colour thing with the swatch sheet. It doesn't match. Let's be honest, it doesn't match. You can get a rough idea from it, but it doesn't match. You do need to do your own swatches, and as the colours change depending on the medium you're using, you need to do your swatch on your most commonly used medium. So if it's not going to be something like the paper they provide, you would need to do your own. But that really is like my one main criticism. Other than that, I have loved working with these pens. Are they the absolute bestest pens in the world? No, but there are pens that cost like 10 times the amount that these pens do. Like, for their price, they are amazing. Right now, they are $36.99 on Amazon. That's in British pounds. Obviously, adjust for your own currency. And I should say as well, you don't have to get the 160 set. The 160 is the biggest, but I think there's also like a 140 or 180, like smaller sets are available. So you don't have to get the biggest and most expensive one if you don't need all of those colours. So for the price, amazing. They blend well, they layer well, they work with water well. I am pretty impressed overall, I will say. I had a fab time using them and experimenting them. I've showed you loads of different ways you can use them. So yeah, thumbs up from me. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please chat to me down in the comments. Please like this video, subscribe, you know all of the things. And oh, thanks to Ohuhu for sending me these markers, of course. I forgot about that bit. Okay, I'm very much going. Thank you so much again. Bye bye.